So we have a great show tonight. Let's get it started. We're really excited about this. Our first guest tonight is a wonderful character actor who's appeared in a string of terrific films like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Weird Science, and Rob Zombie's The Devil's Rejects, and landmark television shows like Star Trek, The Next Generation, Highway to Heaven, and The X-Files. But it's his role as Pluto in Wes Craven's 1977 classic The Hills Have Eyes that transformed him into a true icon of the horror genre. The role of Pluto earned him a Saturn nomination for Best Actor and the praise of horror fans worldwide. Wes Craven called him one of the nicest and smartest guys you could ever hope to meet. This tremendous and much-beloved talent will be appearing at Screamfest in Orlando, Florida this weekend, but tonight he's spending some time with the movie geeks. It is our great pleasure to welcome to the show Mr. Michael Berryman. Mr. Berryman, hi.
Hey, good evening. Good evening, Jerry and Jamie.
Good
evening.
Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We're really thrilled to have the opportunity to speak with you. I want to start out, and this surprised me, and I'm sure you've been approached on this quite a bit, but you started out before you made a decision to go into the acting profession. You started out, you were a florist, or you owned a plant shop. Is that true?
I actually had a small gift shop and plant shop for indoor plants with a business partner of mine, a gal from Beverly Hills, and we were on West Washington Boulevard, right downtown Venice Beach, and across the street was an antique store called the Gallimaufry, and that's where I met George Powell.
Wow. So
was there ever? Did you have aspirations to go into acting earlier, before that period, or not?
Well, actually, I was kind of shy when I graduated from high school, and then I went to college for a while. Then I came back to L.A., and that's when I opened up the shop. I was pretty much because of my physical characteristics growing up as a kid, I always attracted attention. So as I got into college, I appreciated open-mindedness, intelligent people, and broader horizons, so to speak, for the future.
Right.
So my intrigue was to make some money, go back to L.A. I grew up in Santa Monica, and I wanted to raise some money and move to Alaska and be a nature photographer and maybe get in on Homestead, because I grew up on, Thoreau. I always wanted to be in the mountains.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Well, isn't it amazing how life turns out sometimes?
Well, it is. I had a lot of friends that were in old Hollywood that were contract players for Disney, for instance, Tonio Caruso, Ray Montgomery. He'd done some Twilight Zones and Gunsmoke, things of that nature. So I knew people in the business, but not intimately in a working capability. They were more like friends of the family.
Right. Well, your first, I know you did some work previous to it, but your first major film, I suppose it's safe to say, was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, that's correct. That was actually my second day at work, my first day at work. I was discovered by George Powell, whose son and daughter-in-law owned the store across the street from me. That's how I met him. And he said, Michael, it's good to meet you. And he basically handed me his card, and he said, you have a unique look. I think I could put you in a movie that I'm doing, and I would be glad if you called me. And I did, and we worked. I got to work with Ron Ely, and Doc Savage is kind of a pulp novel.
Right.
I have a copy of that actually on the shelf in my room right now.
It's a real collectible.
Yeah.
It's very campy and very classy. But I didn't think I would have a career after that, actually. But ironically, the casting directors from Doc Savage were casting for a new movie, which happened to be One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I was cast by the producers, so I never met Mike Fenton and Gene Feinberg. So when they called me at home, I wasn't quite sure who they were. And then they explained to me about Cuckoo's Nest, and the Douglases were involved, and I just had to ask them if Nicholson was going to play McMurphy, and they said yes, and I was just, what do I need to do to wind up in Oregon and be on the project? And they said, well, come down to Ocean Park and have a meeting and meet Saul Zaentz and Milos Forman and Michael and Joel Douglas. And I did, and then they said, terrific, we'll see you in Salem, Oregon. We'll send you, we'll send you a ticket and information. Oh, and by the way, you have to get an agent. That was interesting. I didn't know
that's the kicker.
Yeah. Well, Cuckoo is undeniably, it goes without saying, one of our great classic movies. And I think the fact that you guys shot in a real mental facility in Oregon made the film a transcendent experience. And I would imagine shooting it as an actor in that environment had the same effect on you.
It had a tremendous effect on everybody. We had about 120, 130 people, cast and crew. And I was there for, 4 months. But the ambiance of the real facility, we had 2 weeks of rehearsals of major scenes. And then during that time, we had to take an hour or two with just a group of actors. And the chronics, for instance, we had to spend time with real patients that were incarcerated. I spent like an hour and a half talking to a young man who was an artist with a orderly in the window of his door watching me every moment in case the guy did something. And he had torched a church, I think it was, but he was insane. So we had to get into their minds. So this young gentleman he painted, he drew pictures, so I would ask him about his pictures. I had a minor in art in college, and I had an opportunity to get into his mind. And I don't think that, and then we would switch rooms. And the doctor, by the way, Dr. Spivey, was the real doctor of that hospital.
Yeah. And one of the absolutely classic scenes involved Nicholson and the Dr. Spivey in one of the first scenes of the film.
Oh, absolutely.
I've never seen a more, and probably because it was largely improvisational, but a more naturally performed scene in my life than that first scene there.
I have to agree, because when I saw it in the theater, when it was in general release, I had that same feeling. It kind of hung on me like a comfortable coat. That scene just sort of sits with the audience very comfortably, and you really get into the room with them. You don't quite understand all of the shenanigans that McMurphy is up to, or the importance of his jeopardy. The doctor, he's very specific, and Jack's character, of course, doesn't really get the full appreciation of where he is until later.
Yeah, and it really sets the tone for the kind of realism, like you said. You're in that hospital, and you just get that sense. Tell me about Milos Forman, and of course working with Jack Nicholson as well.
When I had the meeting with the Douglases, Saul Zaentz, and Milos, it was the first time I'd met a director that was non-American.
Right.
He smoked a pipe. He looked kind of avant-garde. I think he had a black sweater on. He just had a demeanor about him that was. It wasn't Hollywood. It was European, and I really had an affinity to it. I just liked how it felt. The meeting felt very collegiate, but not in the how can I put it? It's more like a university, but in Europe kind of an effect.
Right.
I felt that this film, the way it was being approached, the subject matter, it would have an international appeal, and I really liked that. When we had 2 weeks of rehearsals before we rolled film, we were practicing with the lighting and choreography and wardrobe and makeup and all of that. And it was so nice to have 2 weeks of rehearsals of major scenes for blocking, and so we could have a sense of what we were getting into later on when we performed those scenes. And Milos had us watch a lot of films, and one of them was his film called Titicut Follies. Which is a documentary of a real mental institution back in the snake pit days, and it shows a feeding tube being forced down through the nose of a patient. Real old school kind of incarceration for the mentally impaired. And that kind of was a rude awakening. We also watched The Fireman's Ball, which was Milos's film, to get a feel for how he got into the heart and soul of his characters. The boy, I don't know if you're familiar with that film, but it's very, very touching between the main characters, the boy and the girl.
Mm-hmm.
I asked Milos for a bit of advice, and he said, the best thing I can tell you is to ignore the camera, but have a love affair with the lens of the camera. And I took him to heart, so I studied with the cinematographers constantly, and the focus pullers, for instance, and asked them what, they would change the lens. I'd say, what lens is this, please? And what do the numbers mean? And why do you need that lens? And they would let me look through that beautiful Panavision camera, and I just said, this is what I want to do after that. And then Jack was very, so down home, so honest. I asked him, I said, why did you become an actor? I know you knew Fonda and Hopper, and you did Easy Pieces, and Easy Rider. And he said, Michael, honestly, if I was taller, I would have liked to have been an NBA star.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
That's right. And he seems like, Milos Forman seems like a director that gives you freedom.
Yes, he does.
And Nicholson seems like the you talk about freedom. He seems like the freest of actors.
I would have to say free and honest.
Yeah.
And with deep sincerity, and he's consummate about his character. He really knows his character. A lot of people say, "Okay, I'm going to live this character," Okay, but Jack identifies with himself, which is also the character. He layers it deeply. He has such fine tuning. As a perfect example of the super close up they have at the end of the movie, when Will and Jack are getting ready to escape, and the window is unlocked, and they're waiting for Billy to take care of his business.
It's a long take.
It's a long, lovely, lovely take, which was probably shot about 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and we were all very tired, and I was like about 3 feet out of camera, the edge of frame, watching intently. And it is a very simple shot, and you can see his whole story convey on the emotions in his face.
Yeah.
And then the train, and that was an unscripted take. In other words, that train actually came. We used to hear it at night, usually about that time.
Uh-huh.
And it just happened at the perfect moment in that particular take, and Jack's response to it was perfect. And I know inside his head he was going, this will be the one, and I can't wait to get back into my car and get to my hotel. Well, they were they rented big houses in town, Michael and everybody, because they were there for a long, long time, so they wanted to feel at home. And I was just blown away by the sincerity of a magical moment.
Mm-hmm.
And Milos allows those magical moments to take place, and he guides you to the area. And if you're sincere and you trust him to capture, he doesn't like you looking at him or looking at the lens per se, unless he wants one right down the barrel. So he lets you capture it. And again, that fall in love with the lens. So that meant know your framing, know your depth of field, know where your lighting is, know where your movement is, know not to block your other actors and lights, all the technical stuff. But more than that, it's to create the character and really become enamored with the character, and then be honest in your moment. And Jack's honesty in that moment was tremendous. And then, of course, the close-up with the nurse when she's angry with him. There were some incredible moments in that.
It really is. And this reminds me of a discussion that we just had during our last weekend show. We were talking about the definition of a great actor, or a movie star, what have you. And to be able to hold the screen without saying a word.
Absolutely, that's exactly what the window scene, when he smiles and he just goes,
yeah,
a little bit of a
yeah.
That is a consummate professional.
So was it a tough thing to shake when shooting was completed for you? The whole mood of being in that atmosphere?
There was a running joke that we would actually have a floor all to ourselves when we were finished. That was actually true. We found out some things about how the way patients were treated. There were some situations that we didn't think were too cool. We also found out that the patients, they're not criminals.
Right.
They are people that have mental illnesses, and they don't deserve to be mistreated. I could on another show we could discuss nutrition versus pills versus big industry versus society's responsibilities to our brothers and sisters. That would be another show. It'd take about 2 days. But,
yeah, you're right. You're right there.
We're open for it. So.
Yeah, hey, I got time.
I can rant. In Oregon, during the winter, it's so cold. If they have to take someone to the hospital and back to the dorms, and they're at different buildings, they have tunnels. Well, the tunnels become an underground for the patients to have. They have little parties and stuff, and of course they have help from the staff. And I'm sure the rules. People say, "Oh my goodness, the lawyers, we can't let you do." But honestly, they're not criminals. They're human beings. They deserve to have some verve in their moments of their lives.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the humanity aspect of Cuckoo's Nest and the rules versus enforcement versus a life to be enjoyed. There was a struggle there,
Yeah. To be a part of cinema history with that film, and of course, you did it again with The Hills Have Eyes.
That was a different direction, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, so how did the opportunity to be in The Hills Have Eyes come about for you?
I got a call to meet Wes and Peter. That's Peter Locke and Wes Craven, and we had a nice chat. And they said, "We think you'd be perfect for the part." On physical appearances predominantly, and I understood, and I hadn't had any real big scenes yet as an actor. I take that back. I did have a wonderful moment toward the end of the movie when Ellis gets drunk, but I used to live out in the high desert, which is where we filmed it. So in the daytime it was hot, and at night it was cold. Yeah. So I felt very comfortable in that environment. I knew about certain snakes, certain types of rattlesnakes that are very deadly. I knew about cactus, which certain ones you don't want to get even too close to. And I'd worked with animals before. I had a trained German Shepherd, and I had lived at the Wolf Sanctuary up near Big Bear for many, many, many years. So I was working with Mo DeCesso's dogs, which the German Shepherd, the older one, was, of course, the bionic dog.
That was Jamie Summers' dog?
Yep.
Oh, my God. Okay.
Mo DeCesso and his wife were the handlers.
Jamie, you have no idea. Just
That's major. That's great.
No, it's major. Dude, that episode where the dog saved the kid's life? Okay, never mind. But
okay. Well, watching that movie again recently, I was reminded of just how incredibly powerful it is. And when you watched it in its finished form for the first time, were you surprised by the power of it, or was that something that you could sense actually on the set as you were doing it?
That's a really valid question. Honestly, over time, an actor will look at a film with about 3 different sets of eyes. For me, it's even more than that, because I'll look at it like from every person who worked on the film's perspective. And maybe it's my the way my brain is wired, but honestly, yes, I can detach and get into and go, that's not really me. That's not D. Wallace. That's the predicament they wind up in. My favorite scene that really gets you to the nitty-gritty and holds you there is the moment when the father makes it all the way to Grandpa Fred's gas station.
Yeah.
And he finds him trying to hang himself, and he goes, Get your head out of that noose, you jackass. What do you think you're doing? Oh, I thought you're trespassing. You always try to scare away trespassers by trying to hang yourself. And then the guy goes, how's your family?
Yeah.
And boy, and the father just has no idea what the guy just asked him.
Yeah.
Oh, they're fine. Like hell they are. Well,
and it works because of that
scary.
family dynamic.
Pardon me?
It works because of those family dynamics.
Perfectly right.
Both families.
Yeah.
And I think it also works because Craven, like any great horror director, he creates an environment where the audience does not feel safe. Anything can happen.
Yeah, that and the Last House on the Left, he does that very well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what kind of director was Wes Craven for you? Tell me a little bit about him.
He knows exactly what he wants.
Mm-hmm.
He knows exactly what he needs, and Peter also, a good idea person, will let you play the part with glee. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
He gives you Wes. He'll give me how can I say marks. I don't want it less than this, and I don't want it more than this in these particular moments and or this particular scenes.
Mm.
And the rest he just kind of leaves up to you. A lot of the blocking is pretty much streamlined through the cinematographer. So emotionally, that helped me and my character have space to create. I've worked with some directors that they go, well, that was terrific, but we're going to do 3 more takes because it was this instead of that, and like we changed one word, you know. I mean, just nitpicking. A lot of TV stuff is like that.
Yeah.
But Wes is not that way, and you ask him a question, and he'll relate to the scene through the eyes of your character, which I found very comfortable. Wes he was a teacher, of course, so I found him to be like a college professor kind of a guy, but not stodgy. You know, like a college professor away from the university, because he's wickedly smart. Serpent in the Rainbow and the first Freddy movie just did me numbers, man. And I went to the guy's wedding, for crying out loud, and I'm going, Wes, what have you done? What have you created? Oh, crap, you're going to give me a nightmare, and I know you. You know,
yeah.
I read this script, and it's going to scare me when I go home. And it does consistently over the years.
Absolutely. And anytime I see interviews with Wes Craven, he seems like a gentle soul.
Well, he is.
Yeah, and so it's so odd that he directs horror films so well.
Well, I think he's mentioned in his various interviews that I think he came from a kind of a, not a, I forget, I know, but it's not in my head right now, sort of a, not Quaker, but just genteel kind of a home life, and he has a wicked sense of humor. And Peter Locke, the two of them together, we had so much fun. Peter's reminds me of oh God, was it John Steiner? There's a comedian that looks a lot, been around forever, looks a lot like Peter, and he's got a wicked sense of humor and a lovely, lovely smile. He played Mercury. That whole thing when he's counting, maybe next time I'll eat that toes. And he gets pissed off, and he's got the feathers on his head.
Yeah.
You think everybody laugh? I mean, that was my executive producer. I mean, and to this day, he's still the same way to like you know.
Oh, wow. I have a strange question for you.
Yeah.
I hope you don't think it's that strange, but
I've heard plenty strange.
I know that The Hills Have Eyes had a limited budget, and obviously you're when you have a limited budget, you have to shoot fast and do very creative solutions since you don't have the money. But do you find, because I do, that horror films are more effective when they're done on a smaller budget?
Well, I would say 50% of that. Say half the time, perhaps yes, and half the time, perhaps I would opt for a bigger budget because you can really do some.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. We're here.
Okay. You know, because you can really do some cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's just something so kind of primal about Hills Have Eyes.
Someone's trying to call in. I'm not gonna answer.
I'm sorry. There's just something so primal about Hills Have Eyes and Last House and Left and the original Texas Chainsaw, and I think that really has to do too with just you're not dealing with a lot of resources, and you have to be very creative. And
Well, Night of the Living Dead's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really effective. I mean, there is a director out there, and if anybody runs across him, or if you're listening, Mark Pavia, who did a movie called Drag, and it was about a woman and her husband who he got the plague from whatever is floating in the air, and she has him chained in the basement. She goes out hunting for untainted human flesh. And it's brilliant. He then Mark that was shown around, and Mark Pavia did a movie called he directed Night Flyer.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay.
Yeah, which I really liked. And Lance Henriksen's a good buddy. I think I love Lance's work. And Mark is the same way. He made that first movie for just nothing, and yet is very effective, very minimal. But the way he moves his camera, where he places his camera in the frame, you can do so much by having a little bit of foreground. The cinematography and is critically important, and composition of your shots can add so much. I just picked up the special edition of Frankenstein and the Wolfman series that had just been released, and they're wonderful.
Oh yeah, of course.
Very simple, but nothing is there by happenstance, and that's the beauty of Wes Craven. Now, Wes can put a scene together with very little props, very minimalistic. All the moves and stuff can be really, really simple. But trust me, no aspect of it is by chance. Every minute little detail. Rod Serling did a lot of the same.
You're right. Now, did you see, speaking of old horror, like the Wolfman and Frankenstein, with the new horror, did you see the remakes of The Hills Have Eyes, and what were your thoughts on those films? Is that your cell phone?
Oh, hang on. I'm doing a live radio feed on the phone.
Wow.
Okay.
This is live radio. This is great.
Okay.
Anything can happen.
That was my manager.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So did you get a look at the remake of The Hills Have Eyes, and what were your thoughts on that?
I was at the world premiere at the Syracuse Syracuse B Movie Film Festival, and then I went to the quote world premiere red carpet in L.A. So I'd seen it a few days before. It's a different style. Directors today do things a little differently. They have different equipment and different visual approaches. Honestly, I really liked the beginning quite a bit. I wanted to know more about how the families survived in a nuclear test zone. I appreciated the set dressings, the art direction. It was just really, really cool. And then after a while, the characters became introduced, family and hill people, and of course the soldiers. I felt that nobody was taking their circumstances honestly, and then the family had these really bizarre devices, to entrap and snare and kill their prey.
Right.
And it really seemed like a video game to me.
It turned into First Blood all of a sudden.
Exactly.
Stallone in the woods coming up with all these neat inventions.
Which is kind of funny because, a financial success isn't always, there's financial success, there is artistic success, and then what I feel is have you successfully pleased your horror audience? Because horror audiences read. I have been doing conventions and horror films for 30 years, and and sci-fi and horror people are the most educated, most well-versed and have probably more library cards in their wallet than any other group of people that I could think of aside from a university student.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Yeah.
It's very true. And you can discuss almost any subject with them unabashed and unfiltered, and you're not going to get the type of, can you say crap?
You can say whatever you like. Uncensored.
There's the same kind of pablum for your brain that you get on most, TV and cable, even though there is some really good stuff out there, but most of it's crap.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that. So you mentioned the conventions. I know you're going to be in Orlando this weekend.
I'm leaving tomorrow morning, brother. I'll be up at 5 o'clock to get to you.
Wow.
Oh, wow, okay.
Which is actually close to where I am going to be this weekend, too, so I might stop by and say hello.
Oh, you ought to drop by. We have all my friends are there. Bill Mosley, Sid Haig, I mean, everybody. It's the whole crowd. And, Doug Bradley, everybody. Screenfest is a great, great show. If you've never been, hop on, stick out your thumb, hop on a bus, get on a plane, get there. It's a great show. It
definitely seems to be. The Robert Englund and Gunnar Hansen, the original Leatherface, and are they a community? Are you a community with them?
Yes, we are.
Sorts.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah, we're a giant band of gypsies.
Well, no, that's really nice to hear.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. We all compare notes as far as what shows are good, who's fun to work for, what issues and tissues you have to bring along, and it's very nice to travel and see friends over the years. I just saw Tom Savini last weekend, and it's just delightful because the shows are a lot of energy, and there's a lot of energy coming toward us, and we give out a lot of energy, and people come to these shows for to be refilled. I mean, you can find memorabilia from comic books to figurines to posters to movies that you've just loved, and maybe your mom threw it out when you went to college, that kind of stuff, and you can retrieve them. Oh gosh. Just anybody out there listening to this, if you've never been to one of these conventions, go to them. Cinema Wasteland, Screenfest, Fright Vision, they're tremendous, horrifying. They're all wonderful. Yeah. And if you're into sci-fi at all, you can combine them all together with artists and writers, and some of the artwork that some of these people do, aside from clothing, is tremendous. In Atlanta, Georgia, you got to go to Dragon Con if you've never gone.
I believe it.
Yeah, I have been to Dragon Con.
I need to ask a question.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
What was it like to work with Rob Zombie?
The best. Absolutely the best. Matter of fact, I was hosting the Igor Awards at Universal Studios City Walk in Hollywood last week and a half ago, and I presented Sherry Moon with her award, and Rob was there, and Corey Feldman was there, Rob is very well prepared. I asked him how he does it, and he says, well, I had to manage a band of rock and rollers, and you got to realize that they're not always punctual. So he knows how to get people at point A to point B, so we can. But look, he can manage 100 to 130 people and make sure everybody gets covered, so nobody's sitting there going, duh.
Right.
If one person isn't there with the widget, then you're hosed and you can't shoot the scene.
Right.
And your producer and your investors are going, but I thought you could produce. A lot of people think they're producers, and they haven't a clue.
I guess where to start would be the project, The Tenant. When it came to you, what kind of appealed to you about it?
What I liked was the scene where I meet my daughter, and I don't want to be in a straitjacket, and everybody thinks I'm really bad, but there are other things going on. I thought we had some real tender moments in that scene. The version I saw was a very short version. It cut out a lot of the stuff that really I was enamored to, actually, to be quite honest.
Mm.
I think it could have been a little more heartfelt as opposed to monster-driven.
Right.
As far as the film, they have footage. I would like to see a re-edit, to be quite honest.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be a stronger experience for a wider audience.
You know what? As an actor, though, do you run into this a lot because you put your best foot forward, but in the end, I mean, you have a lack of control beyond your own contribution on the set that day. Is that something that's difficult to come to terms with?
Yes, and over the 3.5 decades that I've had the joy to be involved in filmmaking, I've had bittersweet moments and just fantastic moments. So yes, if you don't have, if you're not editing, then you don't have complete control. But you know what? We get the footage that we need. I always bring something to the scene to help my fellow actors, so we can draw from one another and grow. And that's the art part. You know, as far as how it winds up, I would be much happier if they put the scenes back in with my daughter, because I think it would have been a better film, a stronger film.
You've been doing this for a long time, as you've said. I mean, over 30 years. Is there a different kind of pleasure or challenge you get from the work now than when you first started?
A very interesting question. It is different because in the early years, I had been on stage with a friend of mine from high school, and we were like Simon and Garfunkel. I wrote great lyrics. We could sing. He played a wonderful Martin guitar. Having a difference visually as a child growing up, dealing with raw emotions and trying to mature and understand the world and people around you. Well, these are kind of like literature. It's kind of like stories. It's kind of things that I've read. It's like the TV shows I really appreciated. Now, don't get me wrong. I love a good action flick. I love a good silly comedy. But when it comes to deeper art, I like wonderful stories with good character development. Twilight Zone comes to mind. Many chances that we have to bring more into a scene than is on the written page.
Yeah.
You know, I have seen scenes where there was no dialogue at all. My favorite one is when Jack Nicholson is in Cuckoo's Nest, and Billy is becoming deflowered, so to speak.
Right.
And everybody's kind of waiting. It's very late. Everybody's kind of done with the dancing. Danny DeVito's asleep with the blonde. Jack has got the window unlocked, and he's waiting. And he and the chief fall asleep. And there's a beautiful moment where just before he nods out, you hear a train whistle. And he reacts to it so beautifully. And that was a live train. Or just about every night about that time in the early morning, the train would go by and we'd hear the whistle. Well, he reacted to it. Instead of just saying cut or, oh, that interfered with my scene, Jack Nicholson just, if you watch Cuckoo's Nest, and it's just a simple scene, no dialogue, but his reaction, and you can read on his face, and he does a very simple smile and a sigh. And then the editor cuts to
next morning.
Next morning,
yeah. That's a beautiful movie. I mean, it's one of the most gorgeous movies I've ever seen in my life. But that you bring up an interesting point, because in that scene, Milos Forman gave him the time to show him in thought, to show him thinking. The movie kind of slowed down and just held on to that shot of him thinking, and that's so rare for films.
Wow, you're spot on. That was just an excellent observation and question and comment. Thank you for that, and for our listening audience. Yes, that's precisely what he did. Now, for those who might not be familiar with Milos Forman's work, he had to leave his mother country because he made a movie that made fun of the fire department. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't the reason for making the film. It's called The Fireman's Ball. And anyone who is into filmmaking or film history or screenwriting or acting, look up The Fireman's Ball, directed by Milos Forman. Now, carry that sensitivity on as an artist to how he was chosen and why. That was the reason why. Also, Ticket Follies, because Ticket Follies is about. Well, it was one of the earliest documentaries that I'm aware of about how they force feed through the nose and very much abused mental patients were the last lower on the totem pole, below prisoners as far as being treated humanely. So again, that goes right up to Ken Kesey's Cuckoo's Nest and where we were with the story we had to tell. It was vindictiveness of the nurse to lobotomize Mr. McMurphy.
Yeah.
So when I was first on the set, I remember speaking with Milos. We had 2 weeks of rehearsals with carbon arc lighting and camera, and I said, "Please give me some direction. This is early for me." And he said, "Have a love affair with this lens." Walked me up to a Panavision camera and said, "This is what captures the magic. This is what you have to have emotional response to." And he was right. And you're absolutely correct with your observation about what he allowed Jack Nicholson to do in that very, very simple scene that is stunning.
Yeah. And you know what else about the film, and I know this has to be a rarity, is that you were, if I'm not mistaken, there was no escape from it. I mean, you were in those living quarters, you felt it in your marrow, and that translated into the film. That has to be a rare experience.
It was extremely artistic and rare, as you described. Yes, we had 2 weeks of rehearsals with camera, and we were 6 days a week in a real mental hospital. They performed a lobotomy while we were there.
Mm.
They tried to hide it, but you got millions of dollars in a movie company and locals. Guess what? It was to the marrow, absolutely. We spent so much time. Well, during the first 2 weeks, we would spend one actor in one room with the patient for 1 hour. Mm. And then on the next day, you would be with a different type of patient on a different level. And we're talking either criminally insane or geriatric or, there's different levels of maintenance for the mentally challenged. The running joke, of course, was that they would, each give us our own permanent room at Oregon State Hospital. But it got to wear on us after a while. Yes, it did.
Oh, I bet.
And it helped.
But going from that atmosphere of complete immersion, how did that kind of develop your own style of building a character that you carried over into your other movies?
Well, it was very challenging because I was a full frontal lobotomy patient. However, I every day at work on Cuckoo's Nest set, there were people visiting the set that were friends of the producers, Michael Douglas, the director, Jack Nicholson, and others from all over the world, and the international press corps that did cover film were there on any given day, and I was in Oregon for 127 days.
Mm.
So my job description was lobotomy. However, my job location was the most beautiful, wonderful, most supportive and film school I could have attended.
Yes.
And then, after that, I went to do Pluto and Hills Have Eyes. I would say empathy is what really was brought to the forefront from the Cuckoo's Nest experience.
I love that you use that word because when I think of the great actors and the great performances, I think that what they all have in common is a tremendous empathy, and I think that goes with artists in general.
Of course. I have a degree in art history. I took every class I had at Cal Poly, California State University in San Luis Obispo, a beautiful, beautiful campus, wonderful place to be. I took everything except sculpture and pottery. Maybe clothing design didn't do that one. But art history, studying the master's works, the work of Joseph Albers, for understanding color. He did squares upon squares upon squares. It's in your art history books. From Gauguin to Da Vinci, you name it. If you're ever in Florida, go to St. Petersburg. Go to the permanent Salvador Dali Art Museum.
That's 45 minutes away from me. That's where I live.
And it survived every hurricane that's been around it. I mean,
right.
What a beautiful experience. Large canvases and panels. And then I love Paul Klee, his work, and he was very much involved in music. Good grief. Philip Rothko, I mean, you name it. Without art, we would be very, well, I would say we would be very cheated. I was going to say we would be very disappointed, but if you don't know what the potential for a quality of life is, that's a sad day.
Yeah. And there's also something about artists. You can always tell where we are as a society by looking to the work of our artists. And
absolutely. A perfect example would be, labor history depicted through art over the centuries.
Mm-hmm.
You can go all the way back to stone carvings, to wooden effigies, to tapestries, to bronzes, to historical reenactments of military battles, because they're reflecting, great leaders, et cetera, et cetera. But you're absolutely correct. I would say when our art was the worst was probably right around the mid-1950s. It was banal. It was flat. It was dead. It was crepe paper. It had no life to it. Now
so
today you could do a work of art with that perspective, and someone would go at a gallery go, "Oh my goodness, your tongue in cheek, I see what you're doing." Now I remember conversations listening to people like Andy Warhol and others in the Dada movement, and like Marcel Duchamp, for instance, nude descending the staircase. There were people in the galleries in New York going, "Well, where's the nude?" Well, that's joke. We're talking about, because that was post-industrial revolution. They were trying to express. The artist is always there, regardless of the medium, music, dance, sculpture, you name it, painting, film. We love art. We should always love and appreciate our artists. Imagine this: someone should do a short. Well, I actually saw one at the Calgary Film Festival about. The subject matter was about the worst possible conditions on Earth in a war zone on planet Earth today, and people still have art. It doesn't make everything go away and be better, and it doesn't really give them solace, but it's still a reflection of what their experience is. That is the true purpose of art.
We went from The Tenant, and we really took a terrific U-turn here. It's wonderful.
Oh, I did it on purpose. Look, The Tenant is look, you should go. And Lee, I love you, but you know what? The Tenant was edited in a manner of which I am displeased.
Yeah.
The higher vibration of the drama and the acting and what was there and what was available and is on film was subjugated and given away for egocentric reasons for somebody else to go, "Oh, look, I'm a star." And I'm not talking about me. And I'm going to be polite and stop there. It could be re-edited and be much stronger. And I will defend my art. I will defend my efforts, and I will defend the original intent of the writer to tell a story. See, what people need to address and understand and appreciate is that you can have a great story, But from that page, those stack of pages, to when someone gets popcorn and watches the end result, it can be influenced by many, 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 many people, and some of those people are financiers who are not artists.
Right. We've spoken with. I've done about 600 interviews for this show, and the thing I love most is talking about the power of cinema, because for me, movies are a way to kind of get connected to my humanity and feel connection with something outside of myself and with other people. But
wow, that's the most poignant thing I've heard in many days.
But the most depressing.
That's awesome.
I will tell you, the most depressing interview I've ever done for the show were two people. They came from the business realm. They were starting their own studio. They bought a couple of properties. And the reason why it was so depressing was because it was very clear to me that these people did not love movies. They had no business making them. And that kind of mentality has taken over somewhat the world of filmmaking.
Hey, look, and I don't care if they hear this, because I know they won't, and if they do, they know I'm right. Perfect example, Saw. There is no purpose for that film to ever be made. Oh, but it's $1 billion franchise. Big whoop. I remember back in the late 50s and early 60s, there were movies called Mondo /films.
Mm-hmm.
These were like the taboo films of the era. There's always been that throughout recorded history. Ooh, don't do that, don't go there, and they're designed to basically put money in somebody's pocket for shock value. What you do and what you create defines you. It's kind of like, take a few lessons from Jerry Maguire. If you wake up groggy, you don't need these patent medicines.
Mm-hmm.
You need to get out there, eat right, eat healthy. You know what? We have a way to end childhood obesity. It's so bloody obvious. We have all these fast food restaurants. People, you've made your billions. All we ask for you is to just put in food that will sustain you.
Yes.
You have a distribution center. You don't have to ship cardboard. Look, I was a meat cutter in college. Yesterday morning, the day before yesterday, I was in Calgary, Alberta, taking a walk, and two gentlemen recognized me and said, "Would you join me for breakfast?" And I had breakfast with them, and lo and behold, they were in the meat industry. And one guy was older, one guy was younger, and I started to talk about what it was like in the early 70s, in the late 70s, when I was a butcher at a wholesale meat packing plant in San Luis Obispo while I was going to college. And I was discussing with him about how the industry had changed. Do you realize that people in industries, they're not bribes, but money changes hands to another pile of money somewhere else in another office. It helps people pay for campaigning, and that's okay. But you can't tell me there's no such thing as influence. Long story short, to save a few bucks, they've passed laws or passed ordinances and make it allowed to where you can put a little more poison or make this a little bit less nutrition, and it's okay. Wait a minute.
What I'm afraid of,
what are you afraid of?
It goes back to the fast food on every corner. If that's the only diet that is being shoved down people's throats, for me it correlates to film. If the only thing on the menu is the dumbed down blockbuster, that's the kind of
1950s.
That's the kind of society you're grooming. A society that feels too little, thinks too little.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for you, I guess I want to get back to just a movie question before we close. We could
go on for weeks. Hey, we should do a cable show.
I think we really should. That would be terrific. For you and your
have your people call my people.
I will do that. For you in your life, talking about the power of art and the power of cinema. What are the essential movies that have enriched your life?
Oh, thank you so much for asking that. Let me give it a good thought. This Island Earth, At Play in the Fields of the Lord.
Wow, yeah.
Matinee. Thank you, John Goodman. And I had breakfast with Joe Dante one morning. He joined me for breakfast at a convention. You should go to conventions, listeners. You'll love it. And we had a wonderful, wonderful experience sharing about that movie. Blade Runner, of course. Let me give you one more, because I'm trying to go into a different genre. How about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
That would be on my list too. Absolutely. That was the first movie that made me love movies, actually.
Oh.
So that movie means a lot to me. So I thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Tell me about upcoming, before we close, I want to give you a chance to tell me about upcoming projects that you're most excited about that our listeners should look out for.
Well, the one I would really much appreciate as much support as possible worldwide. I want everyone to go to Facebook to Below Zero and put in a shout to Signe Olnick and Bob Schultz. And you can put in a attaboy and girl to Eddie Furlong, Kristen Booth, and that Michael Berryman does a wonderful character named Gunner. And I would like to promote that. The other projects I'm super excited about, I'm looking at on my desk, and they're all top secret, and I'm not allowed to talk about them yet.
All right.
I really want to, but it's not time yet.
When those projects come to fruition, will you please come back and tell me?
Absolutely.
Tell
Are
me
you
about
kidding? Hey, I appreciate every word you're allowing me to say on in this format, and I'm very grateful for being able to have a soapbox.
Okay, that is Michael Berryman from Cuckoo's Nest, Hills Have Eyes, and his new movie, The Tenant, which is on DVD now.